we're going to make a circle on the screen. Okay. Probably set it to 20 pixels. 100's too big because we're going to make a like a Pong style game here. Look at that. Perfect. Okay. So that's good. Shape.set origin. This comes up in one of the labs, but it wants us to set the actual center of our ball to the center, the anchor point to the center. There we go. Cool. And then the last thing, I might just set it to the middle of the screen here. So I'll go shape.set position, and I'll go 400, 300, because that's the middle of my screen. So now I should have a ball directly in the middle of my screen. Perfect. Okay? And all of that was done outside of the loop. I'm not in love with the idea of having green right now. Just make it old school Pong here. Do white. Great. And then what I'm going to do is move the ball around the screen, right, with just a move command. Before I do that, I have to make a variable that moves it in the X direction. And I have to make a variable that moves it in the Y direction, like that. I think I'll just choose 5 and 5 here. Those are pixels, by the way. So somewhere in this while loop now, that's going to run 60 times a second, I want to move the shape. So I'm going to go shape.move. I could say 5, 5, but that's kind of hard coding it to 5 and 5, and I won't be able to change that after the code is running. So that's why I really do want a variable in here so that I can change the variable when the code is running. And that should move the ball down and over to the right, hopefully. Perfect. Boom. Awesome. Okay, hits the bottom of the screen first, so why don't I put in an if statement to say if it ever hits the bottom of the screen, if shape.getPosition.y, that is the Y location of the ball, if that is ever greater than 600, so that's how tall my screen is, I want to change Y step. Okay, I don't want it to be +5, I want it to be -5. So I could say Y step equals -5. And that will bounce it. The other thing I could do, and this is actually probably a better idea, is just to let Y step equal negative Y step. So just switch the sign of it. See what happens. There we go. It did bounce nicely. It went a little bit off the screen, and that's because the ball has a radius of 20. Right? And so it's actually not 600. It's 600 minus the radius of the ball. So the ball has a radius of 20. Maybe it's 620. No, I think this is fine. Now does it hit the edge? Yes, it does. Great. Okay. The next side it hits is the X, the left side of the screen, or right side, sorry. If shape.getPosition.x is ever greater than 800, it actually should probably be 780. The radius of the ball matters. Then I want to switch the direction of the X movement. So I'm going to say X equals minus X step. Okay, good, 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 good. Boom, boom, boom. Perfect. Then I'll just copy these two. I'll paste them. And I will put in the top of the screen, which is going to be 0. But I want to be less than. And here I also want to say less than 0. I think these actually both should be 20, but let's test it out. See if they go off the screen a little bit. Yeah, it did go off the screen by the radius of the ball. So yes, I will set these to 20. Perfect. There we go. Wonderful. That's how hard it is to get a ball bouncing in SFML. Okay. So take a few moments, see if you can get that working. And then we'll come back. I am now, yes. Okay, great. We're going to make a rectangle, and we're going to move it around with the keyboard. So let's do that. I guess we'll do it here. We want to make all our variables outside of the while loop. Okay, so I'm going to make we haven't done a rectangle shape yet, but it is rectangle shape is the name of the variable there. Just gonna call this paddle because we're gonna make like a Turing style or Pong style game there. Okay, so I now have a variable called paddle, and I could draw it down here as well, which is obviously what I want to do is put it in here, window.draw, and it's looking for a shape. I have one. It's called paddle. Okay, so that should draw a paddle, but this paddle will have no size by default, and it will start at 0, 0 by default as well, and it will be the color white, so we probably won't see it, but it is going to be up there somewhere. Let's give it a little bit of a size and see what it looks like. So I'll go paddle dot set size. There is a command called set size. Great. In here, it doesn't have an option to give it two numbers. Like I wanted to give it 100 pixels by 100 pixels. It actually not going to work. It gives me an error. It says you actually need to give it a two-dimensional number. So the two-dimensional numbers in SFML are called vector2f. They stand for two-dimensional number. That's a float. Okay. So that is the one extra step you have to write in there. Paddle.setSize, and then in the brackets, okay, you need to write vector2f. Now, how do you spell it? Well, just start typing vector2f until it auto-types, and pick the one that says vector2f and hit enter, and it will type it for you. I'm going to write 100, 100, just to see what it looks like. It should draw at the top corner of my screen. There it is right there. Okay. Is that 100 by 100? Maybe I'll go 200 by 200, and maybe I'll put it in the middle of my screen. Paddle dot set position has all the same commands as circles for the most part. So I'll go 400, 300, something like that. So you probably don't want the ball to start on the same position as the paddle. So maybe I'll move it over a little bit. Maybe I'll say like 50 in the X or something like that. Or maybe I'll even make those variables. I don't know. No, that's good. What do you think? Boom. You guys see that? It definitely does not collide, right? It has no knowledge if it's supposed to collide or not. So let's give it some knowledge. I'm going to paste a function that I made a long time ago. Okay. I'm going to put it in the Google Classroom. And we can use that command to to see. Paste this into your code. Boom. It looks like a lot of crazy code, but we don't really care what's inside. We just need to know how it works. Okay, so let's check it out, see what we have to do here. So I'm going to take that code, I'm going to paste it like right here, right above my main function in my program. Normally I would paste this in a separate file so I wouldn't have to look at it, but that's just going to create more work for us right now. So let's just, it's two functions, just like we saw when we made our own functions in the last unit, like, or we use square root functions, or we've used cout commands. These are two commands. One is called check collision. Okay. Apparently it's an integer function that takes in two things. It takes in a rectangle and a circle, and it prints out the number 0 if they're not hitting. It prints out the number 1 if they're hitting on the left or right. Prints out the number 2 if they're hitting on the top or bottom, and it prints out 3 if they're hitting at the corner. Okay? So once I paste it in there, I don't really care what it does. I don't really care. It's just a bunch of math. I got it on the internet and just made it myself. But let's see if we can call that command and see what it outputs. So I'm going to write cout. It says the command is called check collision. Perfect. So I'm just going to write check collision. Should print out an integer for me. Check collision there. It auto types, so that's a good sign. It now knows that that function exists in my code. And it's looking for two things. The name of a rectangle shape. I have one. It's called paddle. And it's also looking for the name of a circle shape. I have one of those as well. It's called shape. Okay. So let's see what it prints out. Let's see if it knows it's hitting the thing. Those two are hitting. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, good. All of a sudden I'm getting some numbers there when it's hitting. So this ball, I now have a good idea of when it's hitting the rectangle or the square. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so it knows. Perfect. So instead of actually printing it out, maybe I just check to see if it's hitting and then bounce it. So if check collision, and then I just put in the name of my rectangle and the name of my circle. If it ever equals, let's see the first number. If it ever equals 1, they're hitting on the left or right. So if it's 1, I want to bounce the X step. I want to bounce the ball in the X direction. If it ever equals 1, I want to say X step equals minus X step. Let's see if it bounces off this ball. If I hit the top first, it kind of messes us. Well, it definitely did it. It got trapped in there though, because I don't have, I do not have a command for if it's hitting the top or bottom yet. Okay. So let's put in that command. If it hits the top or bottom of the rectangle, it returns a 2. They hit at the top or bottom. Okay, so again, I just say if it ever equals 2. Now I could put an else if in here, it'd be more efficient. My code. Okay, I'll say y step equals minus y step. So that should check to see if it bounces off the top or the bottom. Look, boom, 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 boom. Actually have some nice collision in here now. Oh, hit the corner and kind of messed up. So it didn't know if it hit the side or the top or the bottom yet. So now I'm just gonna, whoa. I'm using OBS so my computer's a little slower than normal. So the last thing I did put in a number if it hits the corner. If it hits the corner, we should bounce it off the top, and we should bounce it in the up and down and the X and the left and right. So the last thing I'll put in here is, and I'll have this all on video if you want to go back and watch it too, guys, if you get stuck there. I have a little typo somewhere. I'm trying to get you to work out like how to figure out how to fix your own typos. Okay, so I will bounce it in the X and the Y direction if it hits the corner. Now this should, theoretically, always bounce. Oh, that corner was a little weird, but that's okay. We have to make some concessions because we don't have any physics in here. We're just basing it purely on geometry if they're touching. Okay. Is it like stuck in an infinite loop here? Yeah, hit the corner. It's looking pretty good. We could definitely make a game out of this. That's going to be assignment 3, is to make some sort of project where the ball has some animation to it. We have some sort of interaction with a rectangle and a circle. Could make Pong or something. So that's good. What I want you to do next is to get the rectangle to move with the keyboard, and so that will be the goal for the rest of the day. See if you can get that rectangle moving with the keyboard, and so you can move it around and try to get it to hit into the ball and see that there's collision and stuff. Okay? And